Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vishal Kushalani. Hi, I'm Vishal Kushalani. I'm the Executive Board Member of Indo-American Community Services. Thank you so much for joining us today in this webinar. We at Indo-American Community Services, our mission is to... Okay. Hi, I'm Vishal Kushalani from Indo-American Community Services. Our mission at IACS is to increase diversity in workplace and provide a leadership networking platform to the community. We host several conferences throughout the year, including the annual leadership conference, which is this one, the entrepreneur conference, the women leadership conference, career expos, internship programs, and mentorship programs, and lots more. This year's annual leadership conference is all about must-win battles. With what we have all gone through over the last 2 years, we are now moving from the last 2 years of survival mode, as I would say, to essentially preparing for the future. The last 2 Fridays, you would have seen that we have covered a lot of topics, including retaining and recruiting talent, as well as addressing supply chain challenges or embracing new technologies. Today's topic specifically is about changing business trends and hyper competition. With that, I will quickly introduce myself. I'm the general manager at Winpack. We are a billion-dollar packaging company. And I'd love to welcome our esteemed panelists, Anshu Mehrotra, EVP for Broadband and 5G at Belden, Srini Subramaniam, EVP at Advanced for the Advanced Technology Solutions segment at Nordson, and Lee Bertelsen, Group President of Automotive Aftermarket at ITW. Thank you so much for joining us. With that, I'll turn over to the panelists to introduce themselves and provide a little bit more insights on their background as well as their organizations. Anshu, over to you to begin.
Thanks, Vishal. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the IACS conference. It is my honor and pleasure to be a part of this panel. As Vishal said, my name is Anshu Mehrotra. I am the Executive Vice President responsible for our broadband and 5G business at Belden. I'm relatively new in this role since I took this over just about a month ago. Before this, I was the Senior Vice President for Sales and Marketing for Belden. Belden is about a $2.5 billion public organization that is in the communication and networking solutions and infrastructure space. We serve industrial customers, enterprise customers, and broadband customers like Comcast and Verizon, etc. And we're in the midst of a very significant organizational transformation, pivoting from a products-only orientation to a solutions company, focused heavily on engaging with end customers directly and understanding their key pain points. Now, it is pivoting an organization. By the way, Belden is a 120-year-old company. Pivoting an organization of 7,500 from who they were fundamentally to a completely different orientation brings with it interesting challenges and opportunities. In my prior 15 years before joining Belden, I've had a variety of different general management roles at ITW, amongst others. And I was a management consultant prior to that for 13 years.
Excellent, Anshu. Thank you so much. Srini, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Srini Subramanian, and I promise you I didn't talk to Anshu before this on our introduction, but it mirrors exactly what he said. So I am the Executive Vice President for the Advanced Technology Solutions segment. Fancy word for basically we supply equipment that goes into manufacturing of electronics. ATS, I'm part of Nordson Corporation, which is a diversified industrial company. We supply machines that goes into making durable consumer goods, non-durable consumer goods, medical products, electronic products, general industrial products, what have you. So we are a diversified company around $2.5 billion in size, just like Belden. And we are a 70-odd-year company. And again, we are going through a major, I won't say restructuring, but change in our business model. And really, that's been driven by our CEO, who's been here with us for 3 years now. And the whole point, again, is a cultural change for us. We are going from a company that served every customer with everything to a company that's going to focus on things we are really good at and not focus on things that doesn't add value to the business. So that's kind of the same kind of structure we are going through, and it's the same thing, changing a 7,000 to 8,000 people organization and making them, we've been asking people to go do business one way for the last 30 odd years, and now we're telling them, no, do it a different way. So it's been quite interesting as I've been part of this change. In some ways, I've been one of the guinea pigs for this change, and it's been really interesting how you take an organization along. Regarding my background, I worked in a small German company first, and then at Goodyear Chemicals, and then Nordson's been my third company. I've been with Nordson for 17 years. But in my 27 odd year career, I started in research, went into operations. I did a little bit of sourcing, then did, say, application engineering and key account management, stumbled into an M&A role and into Nordson. And then within Nordson, I've grown into running a marketing team for a division. And then for the last 6 years, I ran a couple of divisions. And now I just got promoted into the EVP role on August 1st. So just like Anshu been in this job for a month right now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Srini and Anshu, for your recent promotions as well. So that's awesome. With that, Lee, over to you for your introduction.
Thank you, Vishal.
Yeah,
thank you to the community for allowing me to participate today. So I work at ITW, about a $15 billion, multinational, variety of different segments. I'm here today representing our automotive aftermarket business, which I lead. That business supplies a variety of products into both retail and professional channels to serve maintenance and repair applications on vehicles. We supply a variety of different brands. Some you may know, Rain-X, Thermatex, Slime, some relatively well-known brands in that part of the industry. I've been doing that for about 2 years. And really started sort of at the beginning of the pandemic. So my career in this role, or my time in this role, has really spent around, for us, how do we realize opportunity out of the challenges we've seen, right? So we have strong businesses, strong brands, change creates disruption, disruption creates opportunities. And, how do we leverage our strengths and our capabilities to come out stronger than we did when we went in? So that's really been the focus for us over the last 2 years, and have really enjoyed that time given the circumstances. From a career perspective, I spent quite a bit at Honeywell. I'm an engineer by trade, went into marketing, sales, and then a variety of different leadership roles after that. And I've spent the last 7 years now at ITW. So happy to be here and participate.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Lee, Anshu, and Srinivas. Welcome to the ICS webinar. And as we talk about changing business trends and hyper competition, the last 2 years, as we've seen a lot of supply chain disruptions, talent, labor issues, energy crisis, political instability, you name it, all of that has resulted in a lot of hyper competition. And let me explain what I would say by hyper competition. The way one would define hyper competition as no action or advantage is really sustainable. Whatever you try to do, the rules of the game are constantly changing. They're constantly in a flux. A lot of new entrants, they come with a quick strike mentality to say, how do I disrupt the market? How do I go after some of the large players like us in the market, which creates different challenges for business leaders like ourselves. So I'd love to get your perspective, and I'll go around the panel to see how do you believe hyper competition would have impacted your market specifically, and what you would have done or have done in the last 2 years to address those. So with that, let's begin with you, Lee, first. That's okay with you?
Sure, yes, thank you. Yeah, for us, I would say the last 2 years, really our priorities have been around staying focused on our customers and taking care of our employees. And so, as we went through the situations you described with, challenges across the board, whether it's employees, availability, supply chain, what have you. Really our focus was on doing the best possible job we could for our customers, right? So what do we need to do to keep them in supply and stack so that shelves were as full as they could be? And we think we did a pretty good job at that.
Sure.
Received some recognition for it, but the challenge we see is as you said, how does competition evolve? Right. So, as we went through the crisis, we learned about some of our supplier strengths and weaknesses. And so, as we think about our supply chain, we think about how we're going to review that and make sure it's robust, and have to assume that our customers will do the same. And so, as we move forward, there's still some question as we see behaviors evolve and how competition can still come into play for us. And so we're, just continue to maintain a close relationship with our customers and do what we can to keep that competition that can come in very quickly, and make sure that we don't lose shelf space or opportunity because we haven't lived up to the expectations of our customers. So for us, it's not much different. It's just making sure that we continue to do what we need to do to keep our customers front and center and drive towards what their needs are. But we don't know how things are going to change and how competition might continue to evolve, because I think we're not finished yet, right? And so there's still a lot of uncertainty. And so, it's one thing that we are, constantly keeping in mind is, how different competitors can evolve and how we continue to work our customers to support them.
Yeah, I think as you rightly said, right? I mean, it's just being close to the customers. That is the key. So, thank you so much, Lee. With that, Anshu, your perspective on hyper competition in your industry.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Over the last few years, the industrial segment itself has evolved quite a bit. As I had explained when I started explained what Belden was about. We serve customers primarily in the industrial or the enterprise space. Within industrial organizations, Vishal, you touched on the fact that there have been significant challenges from labor shortages standpoint, supply chain disruption, geopolitical risk mitigation, what have you. So continuity of business has become a very significant focus area for all leaders within the industrial space. Given the paucity, the lack of talent, automation is no longer just a buzzword. Automation is now foundational to the success and, frankly, the survival of a lot of industrial organizations. It is just something. It's table stakes now. And that's interesting because automation used to be what companies invested in when they were having challenges or they needed to drive better efficiency, drive some more productivity, what have you. Now it's a matter of, if you're going to survive, you've got to invest in automation. And with the data or the output of automation becoming a potentially differentiating factor, companies are actually proactively investing. Our customers are proactively investing in automation, which has created a increasingly bigger and more interesting space for just our industry, and has also sprouted new entrants into the industry because there is clearly a value void that new entrants can provide, right? And these are companies that are moving in from products perspective to really driving solutions. Niche organizations, you see even technology firms like Google and Amazon actually moving into the manufacturing or industrial space by providing visualization applications to build on the data that is being pulled up. So that's one area. The second thing I'll say, and actually there's an ancillary to it, that there are new business models and new entrants that have emerged, leading to even greater pressure on the consistent competition, right? So the hyper competition is really being fed by the pace with which we have to move forward and with the number of players that are in there. And the last point I will make is the adoption of technology is also not something that is just a nice to have anymore. The way customers, even in the business space, engage with manufacturers such as us has evolved very significantly. Actually, evolved is the wrong word. It's revolutionized over the last 2.5 years, right? Omnichannel engagement with customers is now almost foundational. You have to meet the customer in a manner that they want to engage with you.
Right. So Anshu, as you speak about automation, adoption of technology, in your space specifically, do you believe that is it the new competition that's coming in because are the barriers to entry low or barriers to entry high? Does that matter? I mean, how does the barrier to entry impact?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because there is a lot of fluff about barriers to entry. There's a lot of fluff from the new entrants perspective in terms of what value they can bring to the market.
Yeah.
But I would say less than barriers to entry, it is much more about the enticingness of this industry, right? It has become much more interesting and enticing for organizations to actually enter into the automation space, enter into the solution space, because it's rapidly growing. There are lots of niches to be found. And frankly, barriers to entry can be overcome by talent, can be overcome by capital, can be overcome by acquisitions, if you will, which is happening quite a bit. Right?
Yeah, we can see with the crazy valuations that companies get these days. It's just completely unbelievable. It seems like there's just too much money there, but somehow they are making money after doing all of that as well.
Absolutely.
So with that, Srini, over to you. Thank you so much, Anshu, on hyper competition, Srini.
Yeah, so I'll maybe expand a little, maybe not expand, but a little bit more focused nuance on what Anshu said, right? When you look at the industrial space, my segment provides equipment that goes in the manufacturing of high electronics, so semiconductors, PCBs. And it's generally a very stable industry from a technology as well as competitive forces, just because it's not easy for a semiconductor manufacturer to change the machines that they're buying to make those products. It takes a long time to get it spec'd in, and the risks of changing are extremely high for them, right? So one could say, yeah, that provides you a little bit of cover, but at the same time, the rate at which semiconductor technology and electronic technology is changing is much faster now. Everyone knows of Moore's law. Well, Moore's law is just accelerating now. So as form and feature become smaller on the electronic side, the challenge for us comes in how do we adapt? How do our machines go into manufacturing? How can we meet the customer's needs? And this is where hyper competition comes in, because if you look at a machine, it's got mechanicals and electricals, and there is a natural not resistance, but a wall on how much you can improve your mechanical and electrical technology, right? So how do you then make it better? You make it better through software technology. And this is where the hyper competition comes in, where a company, they may not have as good of a mechanical or a machine that can perform from a mechanical point of view, but they use software to make it work as good as a machine that is better designed, right?
Got it.
So this is where the hyper competition comes in. And when you start looking at Western companies as compared to Asian companies, they are a lot more apt to trial and error and throw resources and software, where the Western mindset is we want to provide the customer with the best solution, whereas an Asian company is more willing to say, I'll give you a solution, and by the time you tell me what's wrong, I can fix it quickly. So this is where we are struggling with. So for us has been a culture change in how we serve our customers, right? How quickly, we cannot be, we'll give you a feature every 3 months. Customers are saying, give us a feature every 3 weeks. So that's changing how you develop software, how you test your software, how do you improve the quality of the software, right? So this is one aspect of the hyper competition. The other one is what Anshu said about labor. There's a lack of skilled and unskilled labor. So automation is table stakes. Well, for businesses like ours, which have been not on automation, but the core processes that goes into semiconductor manufacturing, well, what we are being pulled into is to automate our machines, to talk to the machines downstream and upstream. And because of lack of engineering, right, they want their suppliers to come with a package where your machines are talking to everything, right? So not only that we have to keep developing our core technology, we are being pushed into developing our non-core technology, which is the automation. We are not an automation company. We are an equipment company that is being pulled into developing material handling, things like that. So this is the place where we have to adapt, and it's not that we have to develop. We have to start partnering with someone who knows this, how to do it better, and how can we provide one solution, right? So,
right.
So when you think about business models evolving, you have to change. In our industry, it's not about competition coming in. It's about how can I meet the needs of my customers so that my regional competition does not take my market share, right? We are a global provider. Most of our competition are regional providers.
Right. I think that's where you're mentioning about, the definition of hyper competition is a quick strike mentality.
Yes.
It's like just get it out there, see what sticks, and then kind of improvise, which obviously larger organizations are not as nimble. And we just don't have a choice but to become very nimble and start working towards that and making investments in areas we are not comfortable in.
Yeah, and let me add to that. When you are the market leader in providing technology, right, it is a very difficult, it's not in your DNA to put things out there that doesn't work, because your pride is that you will put the best product out there. Some of the customers are saying, just give me improvement and then we'll continue working with you. So, you're trying to, it's in the DNA of our engineers to be the best. And we are telling them, don't let perfection get in the way of being good, right? And that's a mindset change that has to come through.
Yep. It's a huge mindset change. This leads us to the next question when we talk about mindset and expectations. How has consumer behavior changed? These are things that we are facing, but how has consumer behavior changed? And, how are they buying today? How are they interacting? Now, a lot of us, always on the B2B side, Lee, your business specifically kind of caters to consumers directly. So it'll be great to understand from your perspective on how consumer behavior has changed in the last 2 years.
Sure. Yeah, so in retail, sort of front row seat to how behavior's changed in a relatively short period of time, really starting from how do I protect myself and my family to, what do I do with all the spare time that I seem to have now? And so, we saw, pretty dramatic increases in, do it yourself, right? People started doing more things themselves. And I think a lot of retail saw that, whether it's in the home or on vehicles or experiential things, being outside, picking up new hobbies. And a lot of those things drove really rapid changes in the face of how customers reacted or worked with retail. Categories that are normally relatively consistent, saw rapid growth in a very, very short period of time. And so there was the behavioral change purely from the pandemic and what that spawned in how people shopped and how they and what they bought. But also a significant way in terms of how they interact with us too. And so, automotive aftermarket, you can imagine, is to a large degree traditional, right? You've got people who are long-term car enthusiasts, or you have professionals who are longtime technicians. With the changing demographics, the way we reach our consumers has become a lot different as well. So, digital platforms that you wouldn't necessarily think are geared towards automotive applications are really critical for us to react and reach an audience that's changed pretty significantly from what have been our traditional demographic. And so we've got a lot broader, diverse group of consumers that all want to learn which product they should use and how do we go about educating them about the value of our products and doing it in a way that's that touches them. And so our investment in digital has gone up, our investment in commerce has gone up pretty substantially as we've gone through the last couple of years, because that's the way we're reaching our consumers now. And so, both a purchasing behavioral change, but then also a customer interaction behavioral change has really been really rapidly moving over the last couple of years.
Right.
In momentum, but the last 2 years accelerated, I think,
Yeah.
whatever. it's like.
Sure. In your conversation, you mentioned about demographics a couple of times. It'll be interesting to, obviously, a lot of us have had to invest more on the digital side, as you mentioned rightly. Now, the interactions have changed. What about demographics? And also, if you could touch upon the aspect of people did have more disposable income. So if they have more disposable with not much travel, etc., did because the change in purchasing power, the type of products they purchased, did that change along with the demographics?
People invested more in premium products.
Okay.
I think we're seeing a continuation of that now. Even the luxury vehicles continue to be very strong sellers.
Yeah.
But people generally spent more. And so premium categories did well as compared to more opening price point categories. And so it was a real benefit to the industry as well, because people tended to spend more. Their basket was larger and it was filled with products that had higher sell price.
Sure. I'll store this thought and put it in the parking lot for now regarding people spending more on premium products when I get to my next question. But for now, Anshu, over to you. If you like speak about consumer behavior, how that has changed and how they interact and buy on the B2B side, if you will, right?
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. So keying off of what Lee is saying, right? A lot of those same behaviors and interactions are being mirrored by our business customers, right? Because at the end of the day, it's people, even in the B2B space, it's the same people who are consumers in their private world that are actually engaging in the behavior, right? So on the purchase journey, right, doing the awareness, consideration for the different products, and then decision making, and then executing the transaction, that whole purchase journey is now being mirrored, instead of just being a belly-to-belly conversation in the sales organization, to really an omni-channel way, right? So if we have a distributor, or even if we have an end customer, for them to evaluate the different products and then do a little comparison, if you will, and make the decision, you have to be able to be in a position to allow them that, and to take out the friction in the interaction, right? Because at the end of the day, people are also very, very cognizant of the amount of time and energy that they're spending on actually engaging in business transactions as well. The more seamless or the easier it is now, it almost has become a competitive advantage, right?
Right. Now you speak about omni-channel and speak about the belly-to-belly conversations. Do you feel that there's some impact of, we as humans, we are social animals, we love to connect one-on-one and meet, which we used to do before, and now that's kind of become the Zooms of the world, if you will. Now, is that impacting business in any way? Do you think it'll get back to where it was at any point?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Vishal, because over the last year and a half, I would say, actually, starting the early part of 21 into this year, I mean, it's staggering. We're in year 3 of this, right? So this is it's been going on for a while, and a lot of things have ebbed and flowed. My experience, or my belief, is people are actually back engaging in face-to-face conversations, complementing the online interaction. However, the quality of the discussions have changed. The focus of the discussions have changed. It is much less about checking the box and saying, hey, I'm going to go out and visit that customer because that's what I always did. It has become much more intentional and purposeful, where the engagements, the interactions, they're valuable time commitments from both sides, right, if you will. And you have to be able to take advantage of it.
That's an excellent perspective, Anshu. Excellent perspective, valuable time spent, because right now, if it's just about checking the box, get on a call and I'll meet you on Teams, and that's about it, right? I'm not flying to meet you. That's
the default right now.
Yeah. That is the default right now. Excellent point. Excellent. Srini, your perspective on consumer behavior.
Yeah, so I mean, we are extremely on the B2B side. Right? I have no connection to any end consumers. We sell machines, which each machine is worth a couple $100,000. So no consumer buying. But I'll just touch on what Anshu mentioned about time spent. Right? There was a time where customers would want to fly down to check the machine out before we could ship the machine to them. That no longer happens, because what the pandemic proved, you don't need to do that. right? You don't need 5 people to fly down and test the machine. We can do all those things. And what we have also proven is we've been building the same machines for so long. You don't need to check our machines. We know it will run when we get it, right? So that's been a big shift. Same again, it goes to the value you can add in every interaction. So I think that's a big thing. But I'll put a positive twist on this whole consumer behavior. I think in some ways, there has also been, at least on the industrial side, a shift of the power of what product you can provide to the hands of to the side of the supplier than the side of the buyer. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. This explosion in digital technology, everybody having 7, 8 devices, right? And so suddenly there's a supply chain constraint. People need products. And so the manufacturer of the product needed machines. And so when they came to us, we could tell them, listen, you want a machine in 4 weeks, I can give it to you, but I'll have to strip out all these unicorns you want me to put on the machine, because first I can't get the spare part. Second, if you need me to do all those things, I don't have the labor to do all those things. So if you buy this, I can get the machine to you. And what's happened is, even within our customer base, the power has kind of shifted from the engineering team to the supply chain team, where they are able to mandate, get that machine the way it works. You don't need all these high-tech stuff, right?
Right.
So there is a positive in this for some of the B2B guys, because we can say, hey, in this era of supply chain constraints, think about your customer. If they can get a line running in 4 weeks rather than 12 weeks, that's 8 weeks worth of product that they can ship. That is a competitive advantage. You're utilizing your assets that much more faster. So that has been a shift in the consumer behavior, has also helped some businesses. Now, of course, you have to take advantage of it. You have to be smart about how you do that. And don't try to take too much of an advantage of that. But where it makes sense, if you take advantage of it, I do believe that the behavioral change has been both-sided, right? You have to do certain things to your customer, but you can also, this is given an opportunity to explain to your customer, you really don't need all these things. Let me just do this.
That is true.
Good enough.
That is true. Very, very true.
So, and it is, in the past, you are trying to differentiate yourself by trying to do all the extra things. Now what we can show is that is not a differentiation. It is onerous on the supply chain to do all.
Right. It has definitely pushed people to think differently on the vendor side and the consumer side. Say, what do you really, really need?
Exactly.
What do you really need, and what do you really need now? Because of the supply chain challenges, extended lead times, it is forcing us to have those conversations with the customers, saying, what do you really need now? So excellent. That brings me, this is one of my favorite questions. I mean, people who have worked with me and know me, they know I'm a data guy. So this question is close to my heart, where from a marketing sales perspective, we always think, okay, the historical perspective and get data that will drive the future. The last 2 years has proven us otherwise, where past performance or historical data does not essentially mean what the future looks like. And it has challenged our norms there completely. So it's time, Anshul, let me begin with you on the value of data, and especially, does past performance, the last 2 years specifically, does the last 2 years data mean anything for the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Vishal. So I'll abstract the question from data and performance, historical performance, right? To me, history is a good reference. It's a good reference around paradigms, behaviors. But as you said, there has been so much disruption, forced and unforced disruption over the last 2 years, that I strongly believe that forward-looking market scanning is a lot more important than a deep dive analysis of what the historical trends might be, right? So let me touch upon both of these things, because there were 2 things I said in that. Forward-looking. So spending the time to understand what is happening in your industry and ancillary industries as it pertains or as it intersects with your segment, market segment, is really important. We have had to become a lot more broad viewed in terms of looking at all of the different markets, all of the different technology segments, legislative, supply chain, geopolitical landscape, all of these things, you gotta constantly be looking ahead. And market scanning by definition means that you have to have a function that is looking across all of the different competitors in the market, real, perceived, entering competitors, constantly scanning and evaluating and adjusting the execution elements of your strategy around that. Nimbleness and responsiveness has become much more important to me than deep dive data analytics. Absolutely, analytics are important to ground yourself just so that you're not making, shoot from the hip decisions. But there is a lot more to be said about being nimble and quick to react, quick to actually make some decisions, being okay with failing fast and then nimbly moving over to another area or another approach than it is to continue. We will never be able to analyze the data and come up with a perfect strategy. That's just not going to happen.
Right. Now that's true. And I will again park this question on nimbleness and quick to react to my next question. But at this point, Lee, coming to you on the data aspect, and you mentioned about that with the disposable income, people spend more on premium products. And that's the question I want to get back to in saying spending on premium products, the change in demographics. Now, you as a company obviously made investments to follow that trend. But will that trend be relevant in the future?
Yeah, I think there's elements that will, and there's elements that we aren't sure yet, right? So as we're a more diverse country, certainly the trend around those demographics, I think, are going to continue, right? We're going to continue to have a broader participation in a whole variety of different things, and our ability to reach that diverse group and a different generation and all of those different demographic movements are going to continue, right? It's unlikely, I think, for that not to happen. Now, what is harder to predict, though, is what those customer needs will be, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, certainly there'll be some elements where we've seen, I believe it will stick, right? But there may be some elements that don't. And I think it goes back to what Angie was saying. There's a nimbleness that will have to take place and a level of customer intimacy so that if and when those things change, we adapt to it. But I'm a data person as well, Vishal, and I think there are things that will continue, right? For us, there's basic data. When cars drive, they need repair, right? So are there things that, can we look back and say there's still going to be good indicators? Yes. As Angie said, there's always going to be things that you can look at that provide some indication and some grounding. But I don't think we'll ever be able to predict the future to the extent that takes away the need to look forward, as Angie said, and be close to our customers.
Right. And as Anshu mentioned, the forward-looking deep diving aspect, which is interesting. Actually, Anshu and Lee, hearing you, we do have an audience question specifically related to forward-looking and deep diving. And the question is really about, have you seen this successfully applied in the most productive ways, and what tools and technologies are best for monitoring and mining these data? So
why don't let me lead, and then Lee, you can
Sure.
add your perspective, right? Yeah. So the best tool is humans, actually. I'll say, in terms of being able to analyze the data. But I'm also very cognizant that there are technologies available out there that are mining data, that are doing data aggregation, and there are AI tools that are available on, frankly, any business decisions that you're trying to make. There is ample space in there. But all of those are contingent on two things: the effectiveness of that. Number one is the data, is the cleanliness, the clarity of data availability. And number two are the business processes and the business rules that you implement in them, right? Because the data,
Right,
without the lens of what it means for your business, for your industry, is useless. So have I seen it work? Absolutely. I think, I'll speak to just our own organization. and the transformation that we've gone through. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we did two things. The first thing we did, of course, was retrench, as every single business did, to be able to once we got the employees thing done, we took care of the employees, business retrenching, and then saying, okay, what do we need to do to survive and win the pandemic or win the recovery out of the pandemic. The second important thing was take a stock of where we are in the industry and what do we need to do in a post-pandemic world. And out of that was born a fundamental shift in our strategy. That was not because there was a whole bunch of analysis that was happening over the last 10 years that triggered it. It was a seismic shift and something that triggered it. And from that point on, we've really invested our energy to say, what is coming next? Where are we going next? How is the industry or the market segments we serve being reshaped? And that has allowed us to continue to win in the market space, being competitive and establishing ourselves as a well-known solution delivery brand, which for a 120-year-old company is actually pretty darn difficult to do when you say, okay, I'm going to completely shift my focus and be recognized as something new.
Right. Thank you so much, Anshu, for answering that. Lee, any thoughts on tools, technologies to use for forward-looking?
Forward-looking is, we are, the benefit of being in a retail environment is there's a lot of data. There's a lot of purchase data. There is a lot of investment made in predicting the future, so to speak, in certain ways. And so that's important. But I still think the most important thing, it may be easier to get the data in a retail environment, but you have to get the data in any environment. So, I've seen it work the hard way, and I've seen it work a little bit easier. But it all really revolves around how do you get data on what your end users are looking for.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
Thank you, Lee.
There's really no short circuit for that.
Yeah, there is no short circuit. I agree. Srini, from your perspective in the B2B world and the value of data and the historical past performance predicting the future.
I mean, there's consumer behavior, there's market behavior, right? So, I mean, if you look at it over the last 2.5 years, the consumer behavior changed drastically. Everything became digital, everything, you can order everything was stay at home. And if you now go back, anyone, we all live in the US, go try to find a restaurant on a Friday or a Saturday evening, and you can barely get a reservation, right? So I think It's a movement where people are sick and tired of being at home, and they're going to start going back outside. Right? So all of these are seismic shifts that happen. So the way I look at it is, the way you did business pre-pandemic is gone. The way you did business during pandemic will go away. And a new normalcy will come, which is going to be some hybrid of pre-2019 or 2019 and pre, sorry, my light just went away. And pre-2019 and then the last 2 years. And somewhere there is going to lie the real truth of how you're going to conduct business. So is historical data important? Yes, historical data is important. But I think as we have seen, things can happen so quickly. So I've always believed in any organization that I have run, that a team of people, I call them the market development experts. You got to have a team of people that know how to develop a market. What I mean by that is, if you're going to say that let my customer tell me what product they need and I will get the product to them, you're already behind. So I've always believed that understand what the customer needs, not today, but 5 years from now, so that you can develop technology. So when the customer is ready, when the customer is there, you're waiting for the technology. So data is important, but I think how do you extrapolate that data by key conversations that you can have with your key customers and then identify where the customers are going, and then how you can wait for them with the product. That is going to be, it has always been important. It is going to be more important now just with the rate of change of buying behaviors. And keep in mind the demographic change is seismic, right? You got a bunch of baby boomers who are all retiring, and you got the buying power is slowly shifting to my kids' age, right? And they buy completely differently than how we buy.
Right.
So you
Right.
have to be cognizant of that as you go through this.
No, very true, Srini. And I think Srini, Anshu, and Lee, kind of common theme as I hear around all the questions, it's about how do we get more close to the customer? It's really about the customer, and learning from them. We spoke about, Anshu, as you mentioned, about forward-looking, deep diving. You spoke about being close to the customer. And we also spoke about nimbleness, quick to react, changing business processes, automation, adoption of technology. There's just so many things that we've all realized, God, we got to do this. But at the end of the day, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. And that involves people. And people, it's about, brings me to the fundamental question about culture. We speak about a 100-year-old organization. Things have changed around us, and we have to get more closer to the customer through various channels. It's not the old channel, and they are thinking differently. So the organizational culture piece is absolutely critical, and I'm sure that has to go a fundamental change to be able to implement and get closer to the customer. And I will say this line by, it was told by one of my good professional friends, Dr. Brendan Kelly. He's the president of University of West Georgia. And he says, Vishal, there are 3 types of people. And that is 1, who make it happen, 2, who watch it happen, and 3, who say what just happened. And I'm sure that all of us as leaders want to ensure that we make it happen. So I will go around the panel and ask the question, culturally, how have you in your organization made it happen with this change? So let me begin with Lee. Lee, if you'd like to go first on this one.
I think I'd say maybe one thing has to do with talent, right? And so raising the bar in terms of our marketing sales talent has been a huge focus. The things that we're talking about require a different mindset, and making sure that we have the right people who think that way has been really a significant organizational focus for us in raising the bar as it relates to having the right marketing and sales talent to be able to execute some of the things we've just talked about. And I would say the second thing is, we're fortunate at ITW to be decentralized, and that's really paid dividends in COVID. We saw is our business units have run like business owners, right? And so they're close to their customers, they can react quickly. There's not a lot of bureaucracy for them to fight through. And Srini said it, is how do you be quick? Well, that's how you be quick, right? Is you have a small group of people that know what they're doing, who care about their customers, and go out and win. And so I think for us, it's been a combination of having invested a lot in talent, and being in an environment where we do practice nimbleness and speed as a real advantage for us because of our culture here at ITW. So I think those have been really 2 important things for us.
Was that a change, Lee, where it was not decentralized, and as an organization you chose to decentralize, or was it always that way?
Been a decentralized company as part of
okay.
I think the bigger change has been more from a traditional industrial to more of a marketing and sales focused organization.
Got it.
So,
got it.
I would say 1 is common to ITW. 1 is an area that a lot of the businesses have focused on in recent history to drive growth.
So that has been the change of the investment right there. Excellent, excellent. Srini, your perspective on organizational culture.
So, when I think about culture, there's a big conundrum with culture, right? That is, the culture of an organization is the deep tenet of the organization that has made you successful for such a long time. And then we talk about changing the culture, right? Oh, whoa, I'm going to be changing something that worked. But everything around us is changing and evolving. So you think about, when you say organizational culture, you want to hold on to things, you want to nurture the things that have worked while bringing in new things, new ideas, new ways of doing things, right? And then you have, the Great Resignation, right? you look at your demographics within your own organization, it is changing, it is evolving so significantly. You're getting the newer employees who are coming in, they have a completely different viewpoint of the world, how to interact with people, how to work, what work means, right? What is work-life balance as compared to people of my generation. For us, work-life balance was, boss, yes, boss, you tell me to do, I get it done. That's not the culture my kids are coming. I'm sure Anshu and Lee can relate to that. So this idea, like as they're changing, we want to work remote. Okay, you're working in an industrial manufacturing company. If you're remote all the time, how do you have that in-person interaction? Because a lot of the problems are solved on the factory floor. So as I sit and think about all of those things as I was running the division, it was, how can I provide that balance to our people that they have, they can feel good about where they come to work without feeling overwhelmed by the place that they come to work, right? And I think that's kind of the balance that I've been trying to strike. And a lot of these things are done by providing flexibility where you can provide flexibility, and there are places where you got to communicate, right? You've got to communicate what are you trying to accomplish as a business, and culture is about how you do you talk do you walk the talk?
Right. Oh, that's fair.
The key, but as a leader, you got to walk the talk every day.
Right.
So the culture keeps evolving. So the way I look at it is, you got to nurture the key tenets of your culture that made your business successful, but at the same time be flexible enough to bring in some new ideas that the new demography of workforce is bringing in, and how do you marry the two things together? And is there a magic potion that can provide you success? No, I think you got to be able to trial and error, be nimble again. Try something, doesn't work, don't get married to it, try something else, but and keep your people engaged in the conversation. Don't sit in your office trying to design what culture is. At the end of the day, culture is what your people want to behave. Their behavior will form the culture. Right?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much, Srini. That takes me to Anshu. Anshu, quite a few times you've mentioned nimbleness, quick to react.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fundamental change.
Yeah, it is a fundamental position, right?
Yeah,
Vishal, and the benefit of going last is that you get to summarize, the great parts of the other two smart panelists, right? So, Lee talked about talent. Clearly, talent, I believe talent is the single greatest differentiator, right? You can't, everything else is a commodity. Frankly, even strategy is a commodity. You can get it. But if you don't have the right talent, if you don't have the leadership, it's not going to happen. Right. Yeah. So I totally key off what Lee talked about. And it is about being, so this is where nimbleness comes to me. It's about recognizing that the world around us has changed. Our ability, our ability to win in this evolving world is contingent on us changing. So you got to get new talent in, a different type of talent. But with that comes a different type of leadership style, because if you're going to continue to manage that talent or lead that talent the same way that you did in the past, you're not going to be successful. So keying off of Srini's point, communication is incredibly important. This is not a optional thing anymore. Culture is not something that happens. A culture is what happens outside. It happens in your company. It happens in your manufacturing environment. It happens when your salespeople are talking to the customers, right? And if everybody is thinking, is approaching, has got his or her mindset shifted the same way, the forward-leaning, action-oriented posture, that's how culture is getting shaped. But that can't happen if you're not proactively communicating. The last thing I will say is, in addition to all of this, I firmly believe that empowerment and accountability are two sides of the same coin. And that's a really important coin to actually use in building up an organizational culture. Lee touched upon this point, that the new talent coming in, and frankly, any talent, we want to put them in the best position to be successful. We want to empower them, enable them to be successful. But then, of course, the flip side of that is we have to demand the accountability that comes with that empowerment, right? So these are to me, those are some of the basic ingredients of organizational culture.
Yeah.
But every company is different, and
Yeah.
you need to figure out as an organization, as a leader, what works for you and where you want to go.
Very true, Anshu. I think, starting with Lee and Srini, as they mentioned about talent and people, and more importantly, he, as you said, raising the bar. Just have to raise the bar. And Anshu, to your point, that raising the bar comes from empowerment and accountability.
Yeah.
Now, and even if you hire the talent, you got to empower them, hold them accountable, but the leadership style has to change.
Mhm.
That is an excellent point. We see these trends, but we can't really manage the new talent the way we managed talent before. So excellent point on communication, as well as talent and leadership style. So thank you so much on that. That brings me to the last question, the last 5 minutes of our panel discussion. It'll be a quick round as we go around. If you were to provide advice, the question, if you were to provide advice for sales, marketing, and business development professionals who are early in their leadership career, what would be that one advice that you would provide? Anshu, this time, let me begin with you. What would be the advice that you'd provide of people, sales and marketing, business development in their leadership career, early in their leadership career? Over to you.
I'm gonna cheat slightly, because I'll give one piece of advice and then I'll end with a quote that I find very relevant.
Sure.
By the way, Vishal, there was another question that came up in the Q&A that
Sure.
I don't we hit. So you might want to get back to that before we close out.
Sure.
So my advice to early in their career leaders is take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Experiences teach a lot. Don't be concerned or afraid about making mistakes. They are the best teachers. So get in there, try a few different experiences, and really absorb as much of those experiences by taking on new challenges that you can. That's the best way to learn. And my last statement in here is really a comment that I find really find interesting, and this is by Klaus Schwab, who is the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. And he says that in the new world, it's not the big fish which eats the small fish, it's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. And that absolutely, I feel, in the business world is where things are at.
That's an excellent saying. Excellent saying. Thank you, Anshu. Srini, your perspective, advice to young leadership.
So, so let's, we're talking about leaders, right? And one of the things that Anshu mentioned in the closing of the previous section is that how you lead, the way you lead, and even you summarized it. At the end of the day, it's all about leadership. And as you are leading, the best leaders are people who collect talent around them who are better than themselves, right? I've always believed that. So as a leader, if you sit and think that you are better than everybody else, that's the first day of the downfall of you as a leader. So the way I have looked at it is, at a certain level, you're going to find almost everyone in your peer group to be as smart, as strategic, as all of those things. What will differentiate you is the emotional side, how you lead people, how you empower them, how you hold them accountable. The word that Anshu used, the coin that gives empowerment and accountability. And in our company, we call it owner mindset. How do you drive owner mindset within your team? Because you cannot do everything on your own. And the last thing I will leave everyone with, the best way to get ahead in an organization is to obsolete yourself from your current job. If you can obsolete yourself from your current job, you are ready for the next job. If you end up doing your current job every day and not let your team do their jobs, then you will never get to the next level. I think I've always followed that tenet, and I think those are words I would leave people.
Got it. Thank you so much, Srini. Again, Lee, over to you for your advice.
Yeah, I'll go a bit tangentially. I think Srini and Angie covered the leadership side. Never lose sight of your customers. If you're a leader in a commercial organization and you don't remember the last time you saw a customer, you've probably not got a good strategy. And listen, right? If you really listen, you'll find customers very collaborative in developing successful strategies. So just encourage everyone to do that.
Excellent.
Well said, Lee.
Excellent
Great
point,
Lee.
Lee.
Yeah.
Excellent point. With that, I know we have the last minute. Let me go through the question. Anshu, as you mentioned, we have another question from our audience, and I'll just read it very quickly. Access to capital, talent, and expertise drive competition. Globalization and democratization of knowledge have reduced barriers to entry. So how do you leaders think about creating sustainable differentiation to your companies? And what do you see as the key capabilities that organizations need to hone to stay relevant? With that, let me ask, who would like to take this question just in the interest of time?
I can start. I think at the end of the day, every business, every organization is in the business of knowledge. And as Anshu put it once before, you can have everything else is commodity other than talent and knowledge. So I think how knowledgeable how do you train your people, how knowledgeable they are, and how can they serve the customer better than anybody else? Right? At the end of the day, you'll see the mindset moving from being product oriented to solutions oriented almost for every company in the world. And what it means by being solutions oriented is you are spreading knowledge. You have the knowledge to solve certain problems, and how do you spread that knowledge? So I think the best way to differentiate yourself is through your people, and how are you able to solve your customers' problems with knowledge? And the products are just a vehicle to solving the problem. That's the thing.
Excellent. Srini, truly appreciate, right from, Anshu, as you mentioned, focus on experience. Srini, having the owner mindset kind of takes you to that solution thinking, and being close to the customer. With that, I absolutely thank you for this wonderful session, and for your valuable time in your busy schedules to take time for this panel discussion. The Indo-American Community Services truly appreciates your time. With that, I'd like to thank all of you and our corporate sponsors: ITW, Dover Corporation, USG Corporation, Nordson, Sunoco, ChampionX, and our supporting sponsors, McKinsey, Expedia, Winpack, Duck Creek Technologies, and Covanta. And our sincere thanks to our advisory board and the executive board and the volunteering teams. With that, I would say, if you can spare time, we do have a final session 1 hour from now, 3 to 4 CST, on sustainability from one of our esteemed speakers, Aziz Mohammed, CEO and President at Covanta. Please do join us in about an hour. Thank you so much again for your time. Srini, Lee, Anshu, thank you so much. A wonderful session. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.